what would different parties do, like for going forward. So we were very we were ready for that, because we've got very strong economic policy. We also got a very strong understanding of natural farming, regenerative farming, and the food and fibre industry, and so we got to speak to that quite a bit. But it was good. Each event that we've gone to, we've gained contacts for future endeavours, which has been really, really good. Especially around pushing natural farming, and so that's awesome. Of course, there's the other concern here in our area is the electrification, the rail electrification, and the road, and that was awesome. And I thought we actually did get really a good thought process going on the fact that the rail itself, when you're talking about electrifying it, don't forget that we're electrifying the rail that New Zealand owns, the infrastructure, but we've got a French train running on it. And don't forget that when we do this 4-lane highway, that 4-lane highway is being built by an Australian company, and that in the UK at the moment, they are actually, now that they've got out of the EU, they've actually turned around and changed that, and they've made sure that they've protected their localism, and they're starting to work really, really hard to make sure that if you're going to borrow money from overseas, that that is actually being cycled through the local economy, and it's creating jobs for local people, and it's you're getting the value for the money that you've borrowed. So, and like Mike and I spoke about it after, and we thought one thing after the event, we thought, well, going forward, if, say, Labour or National were to get there, like, it seems that they're quite committed to that, to the building the road and electrifying the rail and all the rest of it. If we don't actually have a productive economy, and we don't actually have meaningful jobs, if we don't get rid of GST, and we don't actually have we don't actually increase wages, because wages hadn't increased for probably 30 years, will we even be able to afford to drive on that road, because National wants to put tolls on it? And will we be able to afford to buy the train ticket? I mean, like Mike's got his pensioner card, but there's days that pensioners can't travel on the train now. Will those days get more and more? And he's only restricted to travelling sort of one day. So, like, these are the sort of things that, as we're sort of listening to them, we're also getting a picture of what they're thinking, what is the actual thinking, or the grand plan, because it's not really clear from Labour, because Labour hasn't really released much policy. And Nationals talked about building a strong economy. Well, we still would like to know a little bit more about the how that's actually happening. And because we have now seen policy that's saying that they are going to collect 6 months worth of GST and then hand it back to you, which is not quite as same as our policy, which is get rid of it completely.
Why would you collect it only to give it back? It seems bizarre.
I'd say it wouldn't be given back. It would be given back to those who apply properly, but the rest of them that don't apply properly, put the right wordings in their application, would miss out.
Well, if you're not registered,
get an income out of it.
If you're not registered for GST, I mean, straight away they've already lifted the threshold, because they say they're going to lift the threshold. So that means less businesses will be able to apply to it, and so So yeah, it's really, you're right, Mike. It becomes a policy that doesn't really, it certainly doesn't apply to small local businesses. It really applies to, it's a big leg up, really, isn't it, to those big foreign-owned companies like Harvey Norman's and all that sort of thing, isn't it? Really, it's not really the grassroots localism.
So is that just giving back? isn't is that just giving back to the bigger business?
Well, no, not that'd be probably a little bit too unfair, because I mean,
Right.
like it's if you raise the threshold to 80,000 or 100,000 or whatever of turnover, what, like, these days, what are we going to call small business? So I would have, like, if you're a small business and you're unfortunate there, you're not going to get your GST back. For any little fledgling business that's starting up in under 100,000, you're not going to get your GST back at all. So you're actually worse off. So you're still sort of paying it out, or you can't claim too, that's another bit of a bugger. You're actually disadvantaged to the bigger business that you're competing against, because they can claim all of their input costs.
Well, I've got a comment here, and it says, okay, Mike and Michael, so this is directed at you two. If you were able to talk to businesses around the table in Kapiti, what would you say?
Oh, yeah, well, that's what we've got to answer anyway, in our 150 words. But the biggest thing really for opening it up in Kapiti is just what we were talking about, which is getting rid of GST. Like, Kapiti is not just, the whole area is very much the same. We are actually a productive place. We support the city. I know that there is a lot of people that commute daily from Kapiti into the city and work in the city. That's a bit different. But this is actually a productive place, and by wiping out GST, it really turns things back around for a really thriving place, a really vibrant, buoyant economy. And it's, yes, we've got to build a lot more houses. The building houses when GST is not involved is it's opening up just what we were talking about before. Like a person that wants to come in as a builder, he's on the same playing field as a private-public partnership builder, like Fletcher's, or as anybody else, because you're now GST is not a factor, so you're on the level.
So if you were to remove GST, right? So how these prices are right now, like how prices are right now in that kind of market, how are you going to prevent people from abusing that kind of no GST system without, so they don't price hike and stuff like that? Is it going to be like some sort of regulation that you'd put in?
Oh, the consumer does that. Okay, so that's the thing. It's like, people want to hike their prices. That's so what? The biggest thing that happens in this situation is you've taken away a lot of the control or restraints, monopolies, duopolies. You've now got a freer market. So it's sort of like when they talk about free trade, we actually got free local trade. It means that there's actually much more competition. So the big guy that's been sitting there with the advantage that the small guy's been clobbered by the fact that, he's been at a disadvantage. Now that you're on a level playing field, it just really, really opens it up. But one of the things that we really did when we're building the policy, that we put in the profit share. Profit share is very much about creating a change in thinking, change in the thinking in the business owner, but the employee, so that the employee actually has an opportunity to help that business grow. And when he does, and when the business does grow, he gets a share of the profit. It means that, for obviously the lower tax rate, which now you get a lower tax rate just because you're a company. And we're saying, well, that company still actually has to have some, some structure that's actually beneficial to society. And that's what that does. So yeah, that's been well received as a policy that gets gets people thinking. And, you know, compare that to we're going to find every person that's a millionaire that has $1 million worth of assets, and that's only a few people we hear. That's only a few people. Okay, well, hang on a minute. That's most of Auckland, because every house in Auckland is pretty much worth $1 million. Even if it's a 2-bedroom shitbox, it's still worth $1 million. So that's everybody in Auckland. That's 1.5 million people. That's not a little few people, and that it's, you know, like these are disingenuous. You know, it's austerity, but it's not productive, is it? Because all you're doing is you're giving a government that money. You're not. It's, you know, this whole Robin Hood stuff, you know, robbing the rich to give to the poor. It's never ever happened in society, and it's not going to happen in New Zealand. So, so yeah, that's. I think people can sort of see that when you just, and it's getting them thinking. But I mean, at the end of the day, like the biggest thing that I think that I've had inroads with is actually talking about building policy as people in local labs. That's really got people thinking, because quite a real good strong theme today was just not being listened to by government, and that's in select committees, and that's, you know, that's basically that's our whimpering. They don't listen to us, and, you know, Carly, I sort of spoke, you know, like both in your industry, we'll call it, in profession, better word, but in my profession, industry, we're both treated the same. We're apparently got a conflict of interest, and, you know, we can't possibly be allowed to have anything to do with what would be our future. Mm-hmm. And that's why, you know, like you see these reactionary movements like the Yellow Vest movement. You see the teachers, you see the doctors, you see the lawyers, you see the farmers, you know, you see the people that are professionals or in industry, or, you know, that are skin in the game, and they've been shut out. It's what neoliberalism is. And, you know, the antidote to it is local labs, and that's like that's really well received. And I think mostly by the older generation, because, you know, intergenerational knowledge is something that we've just lost. That's another one that's just, you know, we need to have that coming across, and the old and the young. And
going back to the meetings that you talked about today, did you kind of describe that to any of the audience, or the previous meeting, the meeting in Levin that you went to?
Not so much Levin, but I did think about, you know, like because I've been trying to think of, like, well, you know, you're just looking at a room full of people that basically felt like, why did I even get into this? Because basically I thought we were just being ignored as farmers. And even more so, like, I'm, you know, for a lot of years as somebody that's into natural farming, you don't just get ignored, you get a little bit ridiculed by your peers. But, you know, that's actually, we're so ignored as farmers that, you know, you can actually go down to the sale yards and say, and you'd be chatting away, and they say, oh, you're into that organics, aren't you? And you go, yeah. How's that going? Oh, you're pretty good. Yeah, well, I'm quite interested in that now. It's like, and that's because they've just had such a kicking, you know, and it's been constant. And, you know, we've always like, oh, farmers, you're a bunch of whingers, but who's not whinging at the moment?
Well, I was going to say, I think that goes for a lot of professions. It's exactly the same with education and the teaching profession. You know, there's a lot of gripes to be had, and when teachers do gripe, invariably the answer is, oh, what are you griping about? You get all these holidays, and there's always flippant remarks that go with the brush off, and I think, and that's just an example, you know, the farmers, the teachers. I'm sure most professions or trades would actually say the same thing. the grassroots, the people with skin in the game, as you say, are just not important enough in this political climate, in this game, and that's what needs to change. That's what needs to change. Democracy is about the voice of the people. The voice of the people is not what we have at the moment, and that's what Attica stands for. You know, is for the voice, the agency, the ability to have recourse, to take control of your life, and to actually be able to make a difference.